Okay, very stressful. Okay. Hello. Hi, morning, Minister.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here. First time I'm doing a car interview.
Do you know where we're going today?
I think we are going to Labrador Park.
Yes, we are.
Sounds good.
Minister, do you drive?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, I would think that you drive, but not so often because you have to be driven around for security purposes.
No, not at all. I mean, the security is there to protect me, but I do drive. I mean, they help me to drive sometimes if I'm, there are exigencies of work or whatever the case may be. But yes, of course, I do drive.
Okay.
Have you driven an EV before?
No, it's my first time actually. And this car, how do you like this car? This is an EV.
Well, I haven't sat in this particular model. I've sat in EVs before, but it looks good.
I guess EVs are the next big thing, right? How should we get more people to drive EVs? I was talking to my dad yesterday and he was saying it's nice, but doesn't seem like a viable option for him at the moment.
Well, it's a bit more expensive compared to internal combustion engines, but we are making this move because transport is a major source of emissions, and amongst all the clean transport options out there, electric vehicles is the most promising. Because the cost is slightly higher, people like your dad will say it doesn't make sense, and that's why we have put together some incentives to reduce the cost gap.
I mean, if I live in HDB and it's a little bit difficult for me to drive an electric car in terms of having to find charging stations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why the charging infrastructure is important. Of course, if you don't need to drive, then
Don't drive.
the better option in terms of reducing emissions is still bus, train. Walk or cycle are the greenest options to get around. And so we have a program to accelerate the building of charging stations all over Singapore.
Hold on, sorry. I think I went the wrong way. I missed the right turn earlier. It's a bit nerve-wracking driving you around for me.
Please don't feel any stress. It is.
Do you go to Labrador Park often?
I've been there, but not very often. Not very often. I go to MacRitchie more often.
Okay. Next year will be your first budget as Finance Minister. How do you feel so far?
Yes, preparations have started. I look forward to the budget. Yes, it is my first time, but in a way I did I had some practice because this year we did a supplementary supply bill that was a small budget practice run for the coming budget next year. The actual formal prep for putting together, finalizing the budget really kicks in November. So MOF's work cycle is quite different from most other people. Everyone mostly takes a break during the year end, it winds down, whereas for MOF, this is our peak period, November, December, January, and then getting ready for the budget, which usually takes place in February.
So when preparing for the budget, do you try to anticipate some of the questions that may be asked? So what is the government doing with my taxes, right? Like, I'm paying taxes. Why do I pay taxes? Where does it go?
People also often ask, what more can the government do across a wide range of different areas? Can the government spend more in this area, in that area? So really, more spending and more taxes are just two sides of the same coin. We want the government to do more, and rightfully so if there are important priorities for us as a country. But at the same time, we should think about generating sufficient revenues to cover these new areas of spending. And in that sense, I think we should look at taxes as a way to generate resources to achieve our shared goals and priorities.
So you've been on the MTF for 2 years now. How has it been? Yeah.
Well, this year is certainly more exhausting than last year. I thought last year was bad, right? Last year was the first year of COVID. Something new, we all had to learn about the virus. But this year and we were all hoping this year would be a bit better, but I think this year generally has turned out to be more tiring and more exhausting. You can range from Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix to any bands that have feature guitarists. Because I listen more to the guitar music than anything else.
There's a really famous clip of you playing the guitar. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
I'm not sure which one.
I believe the song is Wa Monkey.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sure. I did that for fundraising.
Yeah.
Well, it's an old clip, I think, because it was done some years back.
So, you having to juggle many roles and also your personal life, how do you prevent burnout?
Well, I draw strength from my faith, from my family and loved ones. I find time to unwind, as I mentioned just now, whether it's going out to the park, to walk or jog, to cycle, to meditate, or listening to music, playing the guitar. And most importantly, I suppose I draw strength from what I see around me, because throughout these past 2 years, I mean, there have been people who are working their guts out, working round the clock. You look at our healthcare system and the people in healthcare. They have been at it for 2 whole years, and some at the front line. It's been very challenging, it's been exhausting for them, but they have never complained. And when you look at how they are doing and how they take all these challenges in your stride, I think that inspires me to continue pressing forward. COVID-19 will happen in waves, and Omicron will not be the last variant we experience. So each time we deal with a new wave of infection, we will always have to keep a close watch on our hospitals, our ICUs, and our healthcare system as a whole to make sure that remains protected and never gets overwhelmed.
I suppose a lot has been said about living with COVID as endemic, right? So how do you see the ideal situation to be? And what would it look like in Singapore living with COVID?
The ideal situation is that this becomes, the virus evolves more and more to become like influenza. Because viruses do not evolve to kill their host. Viruses evolve to coexist with the host. So the ideal situation is that with each wave, with each new variant, the virus will get milder and increasingly becomes more influenza-like. And when that happens, then yes, there will be reinfection. After all, we get bouts of influenza every flu season, right? But hospitalization rates will be kept low, and for people who get infected, it will, you don't need to see a doctor. In fact, most people probably will not, especially for those who are vaccinated or boosted.
So do you think there will ever be a day where the MTF can be disbanded?
Sure, when that happens, we will not need the MTF anymore.
Okay. So, how has earlier you mentioned that this year, second year being on NTF has been more challenging than you thought it would be, because the first was already challenging. So how has this year been for you, mentally and physically?
Well, like I said, it's more challenging because we were hoping, right, after last year's experience and also with the vaccination program being rolled out, that eventually we will be able to ease the measures and already start to live more normally this year. But unfortunately, Delta threw a curveball, and then we had an extended period of heightened alert, and we thought we would be okay, and then still we couldn't, and we had another exponential wave starting in August, if you remember. And we were very worried then that that wave, despite very high vaccinations, would cause the hospital systems to be overwhelmed. And indeed, there was a risk. If you look at our ICU occupancy, if you look at our hospital occupancy, they were all moving into the red zone. So we were very concerned, and that's why then we had to impose the stabilization phase. So each of these decisions were very difficult decisions to make, because we know that people were already feeling a lot of fatigue, and frustration with the measures, and all of us, me included, would certainly like to ease up, open up, and get back to normalcy as much as we can, as much as possible. But because of the threat of our healthcare, the threat to our healthcare system, we had to put in place these very difficult measures.
Just one very final question, which is not related to anything that we've talked about at all, but we were just curious. Does your wife still cut your hair?
Yes, she does.
Okay, that's very nice. Free haircuts for the rest of your life.
I'm not sure how long more it will continue, but for now she does.